Let's go! Let's roll! Let's go!
In this video, I'm going to be breaking down how I put this video edit together.
Better sleep with one eye open tonight. I see red, red, oh, red. Got to your head.
So without further ado, let's get right on into it. So for this particular edit, I actually found a sound that I really wanted to use that was on Instagram. So I just downloaded the sound and then I put it on my timeline. So as you can see here, I actually filmed in landscape mode. And if you notice, I actually put it on a vertical timeline. I'm gonna quickly show you guys how to make a vertical timeline. You go up to New, Project, and then right here where it says video format, instead of having it at 1080p, you are going to come down here to vertical. Make sure that the resolution is at its highest, so 2160 by 3840. And then you're going to make your rate 23.98. Everything else is great, and then you just press OK. And there is your vertical timeline. For now, I'm just going to be deleting that, and then I am going to head over to my timeline. So as you can see on the left-hand side, I have the completed edit, and then on the right-hand side, I have all of the clips that I used in that edit. It's a blank canvas. So there's no fancy colors, there's no zoom in, zoom outs, nothing. It is just raw footage. So if you filmed in a landscape format like I did and you want to create a vertical video, say for like Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or TikToks, what you can do instead of having it look like this is you can actually highlight all of these clips right here, whatever clips that you're going to be using on your timeline. You can go right up here to this little icon. You scroll all the way down and you go to spatial conform. And for the type, instead of fit, you click fill. And as you can see here, instead of it being like this, it just automatically fills the entire screen. And if you don't want to use spatial conform, you can actually do it manually too. So let me just back it up. Let me do this again. And instead of using the spatial conform, you can actually go to transform, scale, and then you can manually scale it however you'd like. Okay, so let's go ahead and start building this timeline. Okay, so as you can see, this clip is actually not slowed down at all. So I'm going to go ahead and slow it down by pressing Command R. I am going to drag that at 40% since I shot in 60p, and I'm just going to place it right here. I probably need the song to make the edit. So let me go ahead and get my song. I am going to press the Option key and hold it, and then just drag it on over here. Okay, so how I go about cutting the footage to where it matches the beat of the song is I just listen, and then I just cut it back just a little bit. I need to quickly mention that whenever you do spatial conform, rarely does it ever have the correct composition that you are wanting. So what I'm going to be doing for this particular clip is I am going to be keyframing the position so that it shows both models in the middle of the screen. So in order for me to do that, I make sure that my playhead is right here at the very beginning of my clip, and then I go right over here to the transform section, and then I press this little keyframe right here. And then I go to the very ending of my clip and then I press it again. Since I can't see the clip, it's blacked out, right? So what I want to be able to do is see the clip. So I'm going to be using the back arrow key, just one click. And so I can see where my positioning is going to be. Now that it's already keyframed, I just go over to the X axis and then I am going to be moving Jillian into the middle of the screen. So now this is what I have.
Better sleep with one eye open tonight.
It's a very subtle difference, but you can see that both models end up in the middle of the shot. Also, to add a little bit of dimension into this clip, I am going to make a keyframe on my scale. So I'm going to make sure that my playhead here is at the very beginning of my clip. I'm going to go over here to the transform section and go to scale and make sure that my keyframe is selected. And then I go right back to the very ending of my clip, press the back arrow key so I can see what's going on, press this again, and then zoom in. And this is what I have.
Better sleep with one eye open tonight.
Awesome. So that clip is already done. So let's go ahead and move on to the next clip. Okay, so the next clip is this one right here. So I am trying to make it look like this. So I'm going to move this clip over here. And the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that it is slowed down all the way at 40% here. So as you can see on this clip, Spatial Conform is yet again cutting our model's faces off completely. So we want to be able to fix that. I am going to make sure that my playhead is at the very beginning of my clip. And then I am going to be pressing the keyframe on my transform section. And I am going to drag it over so I can see Jordan's face. And then once that's done, I am going to go over to the ending of my clip, press the keyframe tool, and yet again, now that I can't see what's going on, I'm going to press the back arrow key, and then I am going to drag this all the way over so I can see Jillian right here. And so far, this is what the clip looks like. Awesome. So you can tell, I'm going to turn this off really quick so you can see the huge difference. So this is what we had before. And this is what we have after. Wow, that was a huge difference, right? So now let's go ahead. Since we're done with that clip, we are going to move on to the next one. Okay, so I have my next clip right here. As you can see, it is not slowed down, so I'm going to quickly slow that down to 40%. Now that the clip is slowed down, this is what it looks like on my timeline. And for this particular clip, I don't have to move the position left or right. I feel personally that this is a really good composition. Jillian is right there on the rule of thirds, and same with Jordan's heel. And I feel like there's enough movement in this clip, so I don't think it's really necessary to zoom in or out. So I'm just gonna leave it as is. And now I'm going to make sure that my clip is on time. Just a little bit off. I'm just going to move that over just a little bit. Perfect. So now that that clip is done, I am going to go ahead and move on to the next one. So here is the next clip. And the first thing I'm going to do is slow this footage down to 40%. Jordan's face is completely cut off. All you can see here is her eye, and that's not really what we want in this film. So what I'm going to do is I am going to come up here to the position tool, and then I'm just gonna scoot her over. So now you see that Jordan is in the middle of the clip, which is exactly what I want. So now what I wanna be able to do is cut to the beat of the song. All right, so I'm gonna cut it right there. All right, so now that that clip is done, I am going to go ahead and move on to the next one. So now I have this one, I'm just gonna drag it over. I freaking love this shot, it's one of my favorite ones. I love that Jordan is pulling on this chain. I think it is such a dope shot. So what I'm gonna do first is make sure that it is slowed down all the way to 40%. So this is what I have. And actually, this is a really good composition, so I don't have to mess with the transform position. So what I'm gonna be doing instead to add just a little bit of dimension to this is I'm going to slowly zoom in on this. So what I'm gonna do is make sure that my playhead is at the very beginning of my clip, and then going up here to my transform section, and where it says scale, I'm going to click the keyframe button. And then after that, I'm going to make sure that my playhead is at the very ending of this clip, click the clip, and then go back over to transform, scale, and then click this yet again. And as you can see here, you can't see the clip. So what do? I am going to backspace on the arrow key so I can see what I'm doing. And then I'm just gonna slowly zoom in here. And this is the product. Oh, that's dope. I freaking love that. Okay, awesome. So I have that completed. Let's move on to the next clip. Okay, so now that I have this clip, I am going to go ahead and slow it down all the way to 40%. So I'm gonna press Command R and then just scroll all the way down here to make sure that it is at 40%. So this is what I have so far. So as you can see here, they're off a little bit to the left-hand side, which it's not the best composition. So I'm gonna make sure that they're both in the middle by pressing the clip, going over to the transform section yet again, and I am going to position this a little bit more to the right so that they are in the middle here. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. That looks fantastic. And they stay in the middle pretty much the whole time, so I don't have to keyframe this clip. And I also see that there's movement in here already, so I don't feel like it's super necessary to add a zoom in or zoom out effect. Let's go ahead and move on to the next clip. I'm gonna just drag this on over here, and then I'm going to make sure that it is at 40%. As you can see, I really like doing slow motion. Okay, so now for this clip in particular, you see that Jillian's fingers are cut off on the frame. So what I'm going to be doing here is I am going to go over to transform, and then I'm going to make sure that position on the x-axis shows her fingers, and this is perfect right about here. I think this is a good composition, so I'm just going to leave it here. Let's see what that looks like. This looks so good. So for this, I don't think that it's completely necessary. Yet again, because there's movement in this already, you can add a zoom in effect or a zoom out effect if you'd like. However, for this one, for the completed edit, I didn't do any of those. So I'm just gonna like leave it out. And the grand finale, here is my last shot. I'm going to scoot it on over here and then press Command R to bring up the percentage. And I am going to slowly drag it to 40%. And for this particular clip, I actually like where Jordan's face is, so I'm just gonna leave it as is. This is the completed edit. We are finally done putting all of the footage together, and so this is what we have so far.
Sleep with one eye open tonight. I see
Awesome, so we just completed all of that. Next is color grading. Okay, so first things first, whenever we color grade, we got to go up here to the window and go to workspaces and then go to color and effects. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on that, and then it automatically will show you 4 different little sections here, but I only use 2. So what I do is I go over here to the view, and then I click these 2 little rectangles right here, and then I make sure that I have the vector scope here and the Luma. So what the vector scope is, it just gives me a really good idea of the skin tone. I wanna be sure that the skin tone matches up with this line right here so that it's not too warm, too cool, or too green, or too pink. So I'm gonna make sure that that is there. And for Luma, basically this just shows you the highlights and these shadows. Typically for me, whenever I'm editing, I want to make sure that my shadows are here at 0 and then my highlights don't exceed 100. For this particular clip, I really do like the colors, so I'm just going to leave the colors the way that they are, but this clip is actually a little bit dark. So what I'm gonna do is go over here to my color correction. I'm going to choose color wheels, and then I'm going to just brighten this bad boy. So I'm just gonna keep going up like this. And then now that I lifted the exposure overall, you can see here in my LumaScope that the shadows are lifted way up. So what I'm gonna do is make sure that they are balanced out. I'm going to bring that all the way down to 0. And I see that the highlights can actually be lifted a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and lift those highlights. And it's still a little bit dark. So what I do as an extra boost is I go over here to the midtone section, and then I'm just gonna lift that up too. So I am done with this clip. So this is what that looks like. So for this clip, I am going to make sure that the skin tones are accurate. So I'm going to go down here to my effects panel, and I'm going to search draw mask. I'm just going to double click, and then I'm going to go up here to this little film strip. To get accurate colors, this is what I do. I click on the draw mask, and then I am just going to get a sample of her skin. So only the skin is showing, and it shows me right here on this vector scope that I am actually a little bit off on my skin tone. So I want to be sure that my skin tone here is on this line. So I'm going to go back over to my color wheels right here, and I am just going to go down to temperature, and it looks like it needs to be a little bit cooler. So I'm just going to bring that over. And as you can see on this vector scope, it is right on that line. So now to get the full video back, I'm going to click this film strip, click on this draw mask, and just uncheck that. So now I can see the entire clip. That looks a lot better than it did, so that's good. It looks like it's a little bit desaturated, so I'm just gonna saturate it a little bit by bringing up the midtones and the overall saturation here. And in some cases, you don't want your highlights to go all the way up to 100 because you see here, her face is just really bright. So I am not going to do that. I'm just going to take it back down to where it was before. I think this looks fantastic, and I'm going to move on to the next clip. Okay, so for this next clip, I am also going to be checking the skin tones. So I'm going to double click on my draw mask and do a selection of her skin. and it looks perfect. It is right on the line here on the vector scope, so we don't even have to change anything. I'm going to uncheck this draw mask and I'm going to leave the skin tone as it is. However, as you can see here, this previous clip and the one previous before that, they're both pretty warm. So what I like to typically do is I go here to the color wheels. Not only do I boost the saturation overall, I like to make sure that my midtones are warm, so it kind of boosts that saturation in her skin. And as you can see, this looks really good right here. And to balance out the warmness, I'm going to take the highlights and just push them over to the blue just a little bit. And I think this is actually pretty solid. I think this looks great. Yeah, that looks really good. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next clip. Okay, so for this one, it is really bright just because I was shooting right up against the window. So I am going to go over to my color wheels. And the first thing that I'm going to do is make sure that this entire exposure is just down here. And then as you can see in my LumaScope, the shadows are not quite touching number 1 or 0. So I'm just gonna bring that down just a little bit. And then my highlights can actually move up a little bit too. Okay, so the highlights and the shadows look fantastic. Now let's go ahead and move on to the saturation. I'm just gonna move this over a little bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and check the skin tone to see if it is accurate. So I'm going to double click on this draw mask right here, and I am going to select a part of her skin where there is light spilling on it. So you can see in this vector scope here, it's more on the blue side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go to my color wheels and I'm going to go where temperature is and just slide that on over. So my skin tones are on this line right here. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm gonna go ahead and go back and uncheck this draw mask, and voila. So this is what I have. This is looking fantastic so far. I am loving it. So let's go ahead and move on to this clip right here. As you can see, it is still really bright. The shadows are really lifted. So I'm going to go ahead and move that down just a tad like this. And honestly, this looks really good. I think this looks fantastic. I'm gonna go ahead and move the saturation up a little bit. And for this clip, it does look like it matches this one, so I'm not even gonna worry about the skin tone, especially when you can't really see their skin in the first place. So I'm just gonna leave it as is like that and then move on to the next clip. For this one, they are really in the shadows, so I really don't have to worry about the skin tones being accurate. I'm just gonna go ahead and go over to the color wheels right here. I wanna make sure that my shadows are right at 0, so I am just going to boost that down just a little bit, add a little bit of saturation in the midtones and overall. And this is what I have. That looks great. Okay, so second to last clip, guys. We are almost done. I'm going to go ahead and check the skin tone. So I'm going to be double clicking on this draw mask. And for this, I'm going to be clicking on Jordan's leg right here. And it looks like it actually needs a little bit more warmth. So I'm just going to move that on over. And as you can see, it is right on the line on the vector scope. So we should be good. I'm going to uncheck the draw mask. This is what I have so far. It definitely looks desaturated. I'm going to go ahead and boost the saturation up a little bit. And as you can see, it's still kind of desaturated. So what I'm going to do to match the warmth of the other clips is I'm going to boost these midtones into the orange. And look how nice the skin looks. It's totally popping now. That looks amazing. And to balance it out, I am going to go to the highlights and I'm just going to put it into the blue. And honestly, this looks fantastic. I'm just gonna leave it as is. Okay, so for this last clip here, just by eyeballing it, the skin tones look fantastic. So I'm just not even going to go ahead and do the draw mask or anything like that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and boost up the saturation on my midtones. And then on the global as well, that looks pretty damn good. So as you can see on this Lumograph right here, the shadows are not quite touching 0. So I'm just going to bring that down. And then I'm also going to bring up the highlights just a little bit. So it touches 100. That looks really good. Okay, it looks like we are completely done with color grading, and the last step that I do is I put an adjustment layer over the entire timeline. Now, before you guys hop on to Final Cut and look for this adjustment layer, let me tell you that it is not going to be there because you have to download it. We will be adding instructions on how to download and install this to your computer so you can put it on Final Cut. But for now, if you don't have this adjustment layer, it is totally fine. It is not the end of the world. And I will explain this at the very very end of the video. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and go out of my workspace where it says color and effects because we are not working on that anymore. I am going to go to default, and then I'm going to go up here where it has this little T, click on that, and then just search adjustment. And I have this one downloaded. So I'm just going to click this and drag it over, and I'm going to extend it so it reaches the end of my timeline. So what an adjustment layer does is it quickly allows you to add LUTs, color grades, anything creative on the entire timeline without having to put it on each individual clip. So it saves you a lot of time. For this adjustment layer, I am going to be adding a custom LUT, and it's going to be on the entire timeline. So how to add a custom LUT is I go over here to the effects panel. I'm going to look up custom, and it should be right here, custom LUT. I'm going to double click it and then go over here to this little film strip icon, and I will see it under the effects panel right here. So for these LUTs, if you don't have any, you will have to download them. I have the White and Reverie LUTs downloaded right here. So I'm just going to go over to that, and I am just going to look at all of these different LUTs and see which colors I like the best. Let's see, I'm just going to keep going and looking for them. That one's probably my favorite one. Okay, yeah. So I definitely really like the third one right here. So I'm just going to click on that, and to change the intensity of the custom LUT, I am just going to bring that down just a little bit so it's not too intense and too contrasty. Okay, so now that I have adjusted the custom LUT, it is completely done. So let's go ahead and watch what we have so far.
Better sleep with one eye open tonight. I see red,
And we are completely done with the edit. So there you have it, guys. I hope that you found this editing breakdown helpful. Take care, and I will see you guys very soon.